Welcome to the Be on the Move podcast, hosted by Andrew Ronchetto. Through thoughtful conversations, we explore how innovation fuels growth for humanity, uncovering the stories and ideas that shape lasting impact. And now your host, Andrew Ronchetto.
Well, welcome back, everybody. My name is Andrew Ronchetto, and I'm excited here to get you ready to meet Susan Hensley. Now, if you haven't heard of her before from her book or from her transformational coachings that she's done with you or the speaking engagements that she's been at, I want you to know what we're talking about today is really fundamentally something I'm excited about because it bridges an area of life that we don't probably put enough focus on, and that is creativity, how that can mold and shape our experiences, create this resiliency for us, and really just ground ourselves in some joy once in a while. So without further ado, without me getting too far down the road, I'd love you to introduce you to Susan and welcome to the show.
Oh, Andrew, it's great being here. Thanks so much for having me. This will be a terrific conversation.
So I got to ask you, like you wrote this book called, I think, The Art for Sanity.
Yeah.
Like Art for Your Sanity. Excuse me. I can't butcher it. How did that come about for you? And like, was that the epitome of all this experience you've had through life and this coaching that you've been doing?
So short answer is yes, but non-linear. So completely accidentally, as so many of the best things in life are. I believe I was more or less led to this point through, if you will, like inner wisdom. I think of many people's lives and careers is almost like a spiral staircase, right? We're growing and we're evolving, but it's not a straight ladder. We're changing and we don't know what's around that next corner. So after having written the book and published it this past summer, I can look back and be like, it all makes sense. But yet, a year and a half ago, I was like, I'll never write a book. Art journaling is just a hobby for me. It's not part of my professional life. So, short answer is yes, it feels like a culmination of all of my experiences. And that the long answer is I didn't really see it coming until I really paid attention to all the aspects of my journey.
Interesting. And so have you you'll have to tell me what art journaling is, but then did you take it and start working with clients that you were coaching to say, hey, we got to do more of this?
That's a little bit how it happened. So yeah, I'll jump back and just sort of level set what art journaling is or what it isn't. It is not about creating art to share with anyone. It's not an end product. It's really about playing with color and art, just like you might keep a written journal. It is yours. It is private. It's a place for play, for processing emotions, eventually for really tapping into your soul's desire, the things that are what I'd call under our conscious list of things to do. It's all about really the right brain. I don't know how familiar your listeners are with the left brain being really logical and what drives our society, productivity, lists, project management, all great, right? It helps us.
I'm right in that category.
Well, and I am too. And so that's the key thing I want people to know from the beginning is this book is not particularly for the artists out there or the people who identify them as creatives who regularly have creative outlets and live in that space. It's actually for folks like how I discovered it, that you're really busy and you are burning out and you are trying to improve all areas of your life all the time, right? It's like physical well-being, mental well-being, professional, family, intention, and it's all great, but sometimes that constant improvement, trying to get that extra few percent, really doesn't create space for play and creativity. And that's what the art journaling, even 10 minutes a day, I'm not talking about a big to-do or a big should. It's like putting in a segment of play. And I found it for myself about 7 years ago. And in my coaching practice, I always, suggest to clients and people I'm working with, look for the glimmers, right? If something lights you up, write it down, pay attention. we have such a strong negativity bias. We're spending so much time thinking about things we want to avoid and don't like.
Yep.
This is one of those. And for me, it was that, and practice what you preach. I kept following it. And then to your point, I realized I was talking about it more and more. Like I had this whole process I'd follow for helping people either in corporate environment with executive coaching or career coaching, or then on the side with really life transitions. And I'm telling people to art journal, but I'm doing it one-on-one. And
Sure.
finally someone's like, you should write a book. I'm like, no, I never want to write a book. I had a first career as a journalist. I came out scarred. It's like, no, right? And what
Yeah.
we say no to so emphatically, like particularly if a few people are suggesting it, that's another exercise I suggest, like really step back and say, why am I saying no? It's because I'm afraid. Yes. Versus, do I not have something I want to share and maybe share more broadly than one-on-one with my clients?
Yeah, no, I mean, man, that was amazing one. Like, because I think you packed so much into that answer about like what is art journaling and how you use it. Like, I was thinking about like just it almost sounds like how you help people sometimes when they're overwhelmed, like de-stress in some ways, like just come back to, because you were talking about physical wellness and emotional and mental and spiritual and work and professional, social, like, but almost like this aspect because they were out of balance and bringing some balance back into there to help create some, I guess, clarity and certainty where you're at. Like, does that, I can only imagine for an executive highly stressed out, it does wonders. I don't know if you've seen that come out, or if there's some things for executives or even like middle management, and just from having them do that, where they kind of go like from, huh? Okay, I'm rolling with you, to, okay, I got you.
Yeah. So absolutely, I've seen it. What's interesting is in a world where we're leading and you can feel those pressures of staying ahead of the business curve, innovation, what's coming next, the markets, and then wanting to be a really good leader to your team, we many times don't take time for ourselves and rejuvenating. And there's many of the go-tos. And what I found is a lot of executives who are aware of meditation or breathing exercises or mindfulness, what it does is it creates a space where their minds really go crazy, where all the things they've been pushing away. What I love about 5-10 minutes of art is it gives your body sort of something to do with all that energy, all those shoulds, but it's under the guise of sort of play and de-stress. Sometimes it's a really great path into meditation. Sometimes it's a really great path into just dumping emotions. I've coached people. I've done this myself sometimes, going out to the car in a break and just the somatic scream, right? Where you just have to do I need to release all this energy that's building up my body and feel sort of like a crazy person. But with everyone talking on phones and AirPods, we can get away now with talking
Just on the
and
subway.
screaming, doing all sorts of stuff alone in the car. But to your point, it can be really great because it's short. And I think in executives or leaders' busy days, a 5 to 10 minute creativity or play break where you really move from that left hemisphere of your brain to the right can feel like I joke, like a spa treatment. It's a release, it's visual, you don't have to give words to it, it's keeping your hands busy, it's like you're watching with your eyes, so you're not shooting off in as many different directions while you're doing it.
Yeah, and I think you're not just saying this is for leaders though, or managers.
Oh,
I know I
no.
don't went down that path, but
Yeah.
like you're kind of throwing it out there to everybody listening to this, is like, how, like, and almost a question back to you is like, for, beyond just the 10 minutes, like how do you see this helping people reconnect with joy and everything else in life? Because of, like you said, the technology, the stress, the work. So it's not just for executives, like you're saying, but for
No.
everybody, really.
Yeah, when I set about writing the book, and this has been so interesting, we get certain things in our mind, like who it's for. So I'm originally picturing a working woman, maybe married or in a partnership with a couple kids. I've actually found it to be much broader than that, but the key that I find when people take to it is they want a little bit more play. They're at a point in their lives where they're either feeling overscheduled or things aren't making sense, right? That's why it's in the subtitle, it's about how art journaling can manage chaos and unleash joy. It really works well during a life transition when all of a sudden you're not sure what's going on. And we don't always have the words for it. We want to know where we're going. And using color, crayons, collage, whatever, sort of how you want to play with it. And it's really getting back to like that child artist, what you were doing when you were like 5 or 6 is such a nice respite, and that's where some of those insights over time really start coming from. So, the groups I have found it best for, the individuals, are really people in transition. It's not for folks who are going, "I'm cruising, everything's locked and loaded." Research shows we go through some sort of transition, believe it or not, as adults, about every 18 months. Now, sometimes there's a bunch, and we call those like life quakes, right? Where all of a sudden you don't even recognize your life. It's like swirling down the toilet.
Yep.
Fortunately, those only happen a couple of times, ideally, but so helpful when you really don't know what's next, but you want to be generative and reinvent who you are, right? We can all feel that sort of teeter-totter of, I can stagnate here and sort of hunker down and cling, or I can be a little brave and move into the unknown. That's where playing with art is fantastic for people's mental health, for tapping into insights, for processing all that, anxiety, fear, sort of those chaotic feelings that one word doesn't describe them, and words don't really do them justice because we're feeling them in our body.
No, I can, yeah, I appreciate that. And I'm like, my logical brain's coming out here. Like, I think we started and got on that path, and now I'm like trying to reconcile it with the other side of my brain
Yeah, go
here.
for it.
But like, I mean, how would I get started? Like, is it about like just pulling out a blank sheet of paper and just like all the way down the side of it a color? Because like, that's just what's going on in my mind right now. Like,
Yeah.
what do you see are these like steps or techniques people can take really to get going? Like if they just wanted to do it today during this podcast, even.
No, you nailed it. So what I love about it is there's no barrier to entry. Someone can do it today. So opening exercise in a workshop I do and this is with the group, but you could do this at home. If you're at all intrigued, take a even if all you have at home is 2 colors of pens, maybe one blue and one black, right? Find something, take a piece of paper, any size, could be a back of an envelope from a piece of junk mail, right? There's no barrier to
Plenty of
entry.
that.
And what I find really helps is you put on a favorite song on your phone. They're 3, maybe 4 minutes is typically song length, and just scribble. Fill that piece of paper. So the instruction is you're gonna have filled that piece of scrap paper that you found. You can draw circles, you can draw lines, you can scribble, you can draw what you love to draw as a kid. People draw cars, flowers, trees. I've seen people draw everything, bunnies. But you're just gonna do it for the length of that song or until you have filled that piece of paper. And that at the end of that exercise, the question is, how'd that feel? Right? So
Yep.
just pay a little bit of attention. What the feedback I've gotten in workshops is relaxing, playful, silly, but like good silly, not like and I've had some really type A people, and I resemble that person, say, "Wow, this is like one of the first times I haven't followed rules or followed a process. I didn't realize how that little bit of, like, freedom, that permission, if you will, like, make a mess." I mean, I'm saying scribble, but you got it totally intuitively. I mean, you're listening to me, we've been talking for, about 10 minutes by now, and you nailed the very first place I have people start. It's just like, if it's at all intriguing, just, like, play with it, and I joke, it's like, just come with a sense of play, and then just be a little bit curious, like, Hmm, how'd I feel? Right? How'd I feel before? How did just ask yourself a few questions, and whatever comes up is fine. And then if it sparks enjoyment, like, give yourself a little self-compassion. I joke about being your own proud parent. Everyone can also has a memory of when they were a young kid and they drew some, some stick figure, tree, whatever kids draw, someone in their life. Could be a teacher, could be parents like, "Ah, good job." Right?
Yep.
Do that for yourself, like, what I joke is love that stick figure or love that scribbly mess because that starts that cycle that's so healthy for us of play, curiosity, some self-compassion or encouragement for just the act of being creative, being playful.
No, and I was almost thinking about it as you were saying it, like bringing in the work my kids do and buying now they have those frames where you can open it up, put a piece of paper in, and display their artwork seamlessly into your house with a nice modern frame around it. And so I was almost thinking about it's like, do I just put that on the wall to remind me? Because I'm sure it'll come up like in that moment, like you were talking about, remind me of everything going on in life in that moment,
Yeah.
and almost just like downloading it, so to say, onto that piece of paper as a means of probably remembering it in some capacity, but also then like just letting it go too, I think is what you're talking about, like just creating that calm within ourselves.
Yeah, gosh, you said so many things there. One, that the frame is the proud parent. What I love about doing it in a journal is you can flip back and see the changes as you've processed emotions. But I'll tell you this, my story of how I started, quite honestly, a colleague who's a, you know, artist, air quotes, or big A artist, right? She's got the whole side hustle, had a little Saturday workshop, 2 hours sort of wine and cheese thing, and I made a mess, and, I'm just over there with my colors, and it's all soggy, but I took it home. This is about 7 years ago, and I hung it on the refrigerator, and my husband and son are like, "Huh." You know, soggy,
Who did that?
uh, brown splotch, looks like one of those psychological tests.
Sure.
But you nailed it when you said it captured a moment in time. And that's when I started to just do it in the journal with no real intention to flip back. But as I started to reflect, it was such a great reminder of how we're overtaken by emotions. And at the moment, it feels like that emotion's never going to end. We're always going to be sad or angry or whatever it may be. And to see it play out in a journal, one gives you huge self compassion, reminds you how resilient you are, and create sort of this journey, and that's where some of the insights are. So I love how you immediately got to, yeah, you could either hang it or reflect on it, and how it's a reminder. Yeah, totally get it.
Interesting. Like I've come from a lot of high stress situations at work, and I was thinking about this. We're evolving the way we grow and nurture and support our teams and our fellow colleagues and whatnot. I don't know if you have we've been talking about how we can introduce this into our personal life a little bit. And we talked about how leaders can use this to decompress across a high stress day, or even managers for that matter, anybody really. But do you have some like helpful tips or thoughts on how an organization or a team could really introduce this into their team if it was something that made sense for them, like as a way of doing it purposefully within their own support network, so to say?
Yeah. um, what I've seen work really well is in the push for innovation. So if you have a team that's going to be brainstorming or doing something, it's really nice to have a couple opening exercises that are a little more individual than as a group with like an agenda. So it's sort of this funny amalgam. It's like we're going to be creative and we're going to be innovative, and we have a timetable, we have an agenda, we're going to do these exercises. Where I've seen it be really powerful is taking the first 5 minutes and sort of separating folks and letting them just process where they are, right? With crayons or with color, just something to get them in to that more open space. Maybe they draw, emojis or faces, little faces screaming if they're having a bad day, whatever they choose to do. It's private, but it's almost a chance to shake off everything and move yourself really intentionally into that more creative side. So where it's best for teams, coming back to your question, is really before anything where you're wanting people to be innovative, right? I mean, nothing I think kills creativity and innovation and like, go, be creative, right? It's like,
Yeah, the suspense.
yeah, and the performance aspect and the pressure, right? You really want to get over into that flowing improv sort of style where we can grow and add to ideas and be playful in a place where that inner critic isn't there. And so I think that's where it could be really helpful as a group. I tend to view it a little more as an individual tool, but I've seen it work so well in those settings with groups.
Interesting. Yeah, because I could see almost, some people start off meetings and it's just go, 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 or team builders. And, I think we're sometimes always catching up from the last thing we were just, running from, so to say.
Yeah,
I wonder, we've talked about like playing music at the beginning of meetings, like play your favorite song.
yeah.
And you talked about that even too, like play a song and color. It's fascinating how this is kind of just another dimension of letting go. And so I could see where resiliency comes out of this. Like I could see where joy and happiness can come about it because I'm just in a moment for myself. So I really appreciate that. And I love how you're connecting it across all these kind of aspects of life. Because I think it's important to just see the interconnected, just thought process that this can bring to those dimensions, so to say. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Well, and I'm curious. So like if what haven't we talked about today around creativity? What haven't we talked about with related to what you're doing, what excites you, brings you to the office, or so to say, brings you to the client meetings? Like, are there other things we should definitely follow up with you on after this podcast?
Well, I think what I would say is if anything we've talked about, right? Because we sort of weave this all together, uh, strikes you or makes you curious. On the website, my website, I have a free PDF that gets you started on art journaling. And you can go download that. You could do the exercise, you sort of intuitively understood. But I want to build on something you just said, which is when we can use our other senses, when we listen to music that we choose, when we're drawing with our hands, when we're playing with color, when we're engaging more than one sense, we're not just like sitting there trying to think or do. We are full sensory beings, right? And I think
Yes.
people just find what I've seen with my clients, with everyone I work, the minute you tap into some of those other senses, touch, sight in a different way, not looking at a PowerPoint or an Excel spreadsheet, but, you know, color, hearing music, it just moves us into such a fuller, more holistic place. And I think then we're able to really bring our best self, or at least integrate everything we're feeling and what's happening. I think it's very easy to disassociate and just like go, go, go. What's next on my list? Or when you get a break, to numb out, to grab your phone and scroll.
Sure.
Once again, there's a place for that, but what I've found and what I really suggest is replace one of those scrolling sessions with some art. Like maybe you scroll while, you're getting food or in traffic or waiting in line to get the kids. I mean, there's all these moments that we sort of grab the phone and play a game, scroll, whatever. Doing something creative, it could even just be singing favorite song at top of your lungs to give the privacy, right? Just some outlet. Put one of those sessions, a few minutes in place, like trade it out of what I would call a behavior that maybe takes you a little less conscious, right? One that more attunes you back into your space. So that's the other place. Is just replace one of those times when you'd be thinking of grabbing for the phone, grab a pen and doodle what you used to love to do as a 5-year-old.
Oh my God. Like pardon my French there, but I think you just hit like an amazing way of thinking about incorporating this into our practices of life. Because I mean, you're not just talking about, well, here's one more thing you need to do, you know, to create balance, as if to drive more stress. I mean, you're really leaving us and myself and the listeners with this idea of those 10 minutes on Instagram, or sorry, maybe those 2 hours at this point. Like we've all been
Right.
there. Like just make it an hour and a half or something and take that other portion and go do this. I love that because I think it's such a simple way of just getting going with it and helping me kind of create this sync in my inner, calmness with my inner self, my critic of, what I'm doing and whatnot. So I love that. I think that's an awesome way to end this episode and whatnot, with just an easy, tangible way to get going with it. And I really appreciate, Susan, you sharing what art journaling is, because I tell you, I did not expect it to the way you were describing. I'm ready to go because my brain is just like, in chaos at the moment, but, just scribble it down and get going with it as a means of creating that calm. So thank you so much for sharing this with the audience today. And I hope listeners, you heard it right from Susan. You engage with her. We'll have all of her information in the show notes. But until the next time, thank you for listening in, and we'll catch you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Beyond the Move. Don't forget to follow us, rate the show, and share with others. If you're ready to dive deeper, visit us at beyondplatform.com. Catch you next time.